This week we're going to make something that it's kind of a guilty pleasure of mine. I like keeping them in my freezer because you can just pop them right out of the freezer and fry them up in a frying pan, and it's like the perfect little yummy, yummy snack. Today I wanted to make Chinese scallion pancakes. And it's one of those snacks that I always want to order when I'm out getting dim sum, but I just eventually never get around to getting it because dim sum, there's so much more amazing things that I want to get into my mouth. And by the time I'm like, oh yeah, scallion pancakes, like my stomach's already full. So this is a great way for me to have those at home without having to go out to a restaurant or anything like that and order something big. Like have the pancakes come with my meal, right? So super simple. There's a little bit of patience involved just in waiting in terms of flavor. I'll go through it and then you can decide how you want to make it if you want to make it at home. So in a bowl, I've got 2 cups of all-purpose flour. You don't want to use bread flour because this isn't something that you're going to use with like a yeast, so it's not going to rise. So you're not looking for it to have that kind of high protein, high gluten bread. Like it's not a bread, right? So you want something that is all-purpose. I've heard that you can actually do half cake flour, half all-purpose flour, but I'll always stay away from the bread flour in terms of this recipe. To that, we're going to add, and I kind of already had this going, so we were going to sit around and just watch water boil because it's kind of boring, right? So we're gonna do half a cup of boiling water, and what the boiling water does is it actually denatures the gluten in the pancake so that it also, again, doesn't rise, because what we're trying to make here is a bunch of little crispy, amazing, flaky layers that are tasty and have like bits of onion and 5 spice inside them, but you're not looking for something that's big and puffy. So once you have your boiling water, I hope that I don't put boiling water on my hand. So I'm gonna do it over this towel. And get a little bit, yep. So that's half a cup of boiling water. Oh, but before we add that, we have to actually add some salt. So we're going to do a 1/4 teaspoon salt. Flour, and then our boiling water is half a cup. And then you just take a pair of chopsticks. I like using chopsticks for this to just kind of bind everything together. And you can totally tell that it's already starting to clump up a little bit. And then to this, you're going to add a 1/4 cup of just room temperature water. So you start with the hot boiling water because you want to denature the gluten proteins that are in the flour, so it becomes a little bit more like kind of cakey and less like a bread. I've got my room temp water here. I'm getting better at this. I'm getting better at this cooking thing because I can actually plan so I don't have to keep cutting and going to the fridge and making you guys have to go through all these transitions. I'm gonna try to do this one all the way through, no edits, so we'll see. So I'm gonna do a 1/4 cup of water, but I tend to like to, water and flour, it really is very dependent on the humidity of the town that you're in. So if you're like on the East Coast, especially right now, you're probably not making anything because you're running away and evacuating and trying to stay safe. And I hope you guys are doing that if you know anybody in that area. But on the East Coast and the South, and you know, basically anywhere that's not like the Southwest is always going to need less water. And if in places like Southern California and Arizona and New Mexico and Vegas, you're probably going to use a little less water. And the amount of water changes kind of every day for me too, every time I'm cooking, because sometimes it's a little bit more humid outside. So once we have put all of that together, I think that was enough water, but we'll start kneading this together and seeing if we need any more liquid. Get my arm workout today. And then what you kind of want to do is knead this until it all becomes incorporated. You don't have any bits and pieces on the bottom of your bowl. And it's still a little bit dry, so I'm going to add just a little touch of water. But always work in small increments. You don't want to make this into a big old messy mud pie. And you definitely don't want to make this really thin like a pancake batter. So, but this dough doesn't have any yeast. It's literally just salt, flour, and water. And then what you're doing is just kind of kneading the dough so it gets incorporated, starts absorbing the water. And I found that about a good 10-15 minutes of kneading is what you kind of need to get this all kind of blended and ready to go. Almost there. And once you have this dough, you shouldn't have anything really like sticking to your hands if you've done it right. And if you take a closer look, it's kind of looks like the top of an unbaked biscuit, like it's kind of a little lumpy. What you do is you put this in a bowl with a little bit of just a neutral oil, salad oil, canola oil, nothing, not like a sesame or anything like that. And you're going to coat this, and you're going to let it rest. So most recipes will say, let this rest for like an hour. But I also found a video on YouTube that said that a lot of the street vendors in Taiwan make these, but they make these the night before and then they keep them refrigerated, and so that the dough's already ready to go in their cart. So the general consensus is leaving this overnight to rest and let the gluten kind of soften and relax and absorb all the water. That's the best way to go. So that gets a piece of plastic wrap. You can put it in the fridge if you're gonna keep it overnight. And this is the batch that I made last night. You can already tell that it's smooth. There's still oil on it, but it's smooth. And it's much more delicate. It's much softer. It's, oh God, it's so pliable. It feels like it really went from, here, hold on. Put these side by side. So this was what it was like before I let it rest. And this is what it was like after I've let it rest about 12 hours, so overnight. You can totally see the difference in the texture of the top of the dough. And even when you squish it, you can totally tell, like it doesn't, see what I mean? It's smoother if you leave it to rest. So that's today's lesson. It also means I have extra dough for tomorrow. So the name of the game, once you have this, is to just kind of fold it in just a couple more times, just kind of wake things back up. And I am going to quickly wash my hands because I need to make this. I need to make the scallion paste that goes inside the into these scallion pancakes. So let me quickly make it a little less oily. I'll be right back. So what do we do with the scallion part of the scallion pancake? So I've got a cup of scallions here. It's gonna be about like 4 or 5 medium scallions. You're gonna want to concentrate more on the green stuff than the white parts. But I like a little extra onion flavor, so I add a little bit of the yellow of the white parts of the green onion. Lots of colors. To this, we're going to add half a cup of all-purpose flour, same flour that we use to make the pancake dough. And we're going to add half a cup of a neutral oil, but we're going to actually heat it up. So get this going. A little bit more. And we are just going to heat this up. And while we're waiting, we're also going to add 1 and a half teaspoons of salt. And then we also add a bit of Chinese 5-spice. I'm gonna add the same amount as the salt, and we are going to do 1 and a half teaspoons. Chinese spice really is like probably one of my favorite spices. That almost sounds ready. You can tell when there's been a little bit of water in the frying pan because it starts popping out. And we take that Chinese spice, put the lid back on. Ooh. I'm gonna mix this all quickly together. And then what you're gonna do is actually cook all of this with this hot neutral oil so that you end up making a paste. So now that that's hot enough, you can actually see it. Let me see if I can move this out of the way. So you can actually see it bubbling. And then I'm going to leave that frying pan there so that we can make an actual pancake today. And just be careful because that oil is hot. So and you want to make sure that all the flour is incorporated, and you end up with this fragrant scallion flour and oil It's basically like a mildly cooked roux, I guess. If you want to think of it in non-Asian formats. Okay, so while I let that sit, I'm gonna bring my dough back and move all of this out of the way because we do not need it anymore. But what we need is a rolling pin. So on a floured surface, you don't have to go too crazy with the flour. I think I may have added too much flour. Okay, to here, we're going to add our dough, which can actually get cut into this. This makes 3. So just kind of form it into a dough roll. Take your cutter, cut it into 3 decent sizes. Put those aside. And then with this one, you're going to take your rolling pin, roll this out. The thinner the better, because you want it to have a whole bunch of really, really thin layers. So doing it and leaving it like a thick, like a dumpling wrapper is not gonna work. And you kind of want to make it like long and rectangular rather than like a pizza size, because you want to be able to roll it kind of on itself, and it's kind of hard to do that when it's a circle or a square. But it is very easy to do if you are doing it as a rectangle or an oblong, I guess. See, if that dough hadn't rested, it would have just gotten stuck to itself, and that would have been the end of that. Okay, just double check and see how we're doing on the thickness. Obviously not making the most attractive rectangle here, but it's all part of the test kitchen, right? It's trying things and seeing what works and seeing what doesn't work. Okay, so I think it needs one more roll out. Okay, I've made a t-shirt shaped dough for my scallion pancake, but let me kind of get this off the table. And then what you're going to do is take this amazing fragrant, oh god, that Chinese spice is amazing stuff. And then you're going to brush it on. It's so interesting to see how many different cultures make a layered dough, a flaky layered dough product. You know, because like in Europe, you've got like croissants and cornets and all sorts of layered dough, but they put butter in between each one of the layers, and then they fold it over and over and over. Whereas with Chinese scallion pancakes, we're not using butter, we're using neutral oil, and then we're using a rolling technique rather than folding it over and over and over onto itself. Kind of want to add some more onions. You don't want to go too thick with this flour mixture. I just got this pastry brush and I'm not necessarily the biggest fan because it's a little, see what I mean? It's a little floppy. So, but we're going to give this a shot and see how it does. Okay. To this, we are going to, so there's a bunch of different techniques on rolling Chinese scallion pancakes, and each one of them gets you a different kind of texture and different kind of mouthfeel. They all taste the same, but some are flakier than others. So this is the technique that I like out of all of them, which is to roll from either side and meet in the middle. The nice thing is each one of these kind of rolls is a layer. So the more layers you make, my mouth is already watering from smelling the 5-spice. You know, so instead of just rolling it just one way, if you do it both ways and meet in the middle, it actually makes for a much more interesting multi-layered scallion pancake. And so you're going to do the same thing with that. So going this way too. So you're actually going to make a scroll that goes in 2 directions. So it kind of looks like that, right? And then once you have it like this, you're going to fold it on top of each other. So you're going to go this way. And then you smush that down. And you can make a whole bunch of these in advance and keep them in your freezer. And if you keep them in your freezer, all you have to do is just take them out of the freezer, putting on a frying pan, like 3 or 4 minutes on each side. You don't necessarily need to defrost them. In fact, it's probably better if you don't. And we're going to let that rest just for a few minutes. I'm actually going to try making one more. See if I can get it even thinner. Oops. Making a mess. Let's take this one because it's already shaped. Kind of like a square. And the thinner you can make these, the better it'll be, but if that means you've got to make these even smaller to start with, that works too. So let me do that. Let me tear this in half. Ooh, that feels better. Making food that isn't necessarily like a precise science, you know? So, I don't know, there's part of me that really feels that like homemade food is purposefully messy looking, not perfect, not like store quality, and I think that's okay. Yeah, I think next next time I'm going to get like a different kind of pastry brush. So it's not quite so floppy. The other thing you can do is you can actually make this mix without the green onions, without the scallions, and then you can just sprinkle the scallions on after you add this kind of like flour and hot oil layer. Okay. To that, we're going to do the rolling thing again, where we roll one side and take that to the middle. And we're going to take this side and roll that to the middle. And then I'm going to take one side and start rolling it onto itself until it meets the middle. So here's the thing, you can actually go all the way like this, and that's a scallion pancake. But you will have twice as many layers if you do it this way. And then stack them on top. And smush. Ooh, that one almost came out better. Just prettier, not better. It still tastes the same, you know. And roll this out gently. And then you can make this as thick or thin as you want. Obviously it's better if you don't have things like poking out of it, ingredient wise, but. So to that, we're going to now fry one. Move this out of the way. Today has been a messy Test Kitchen Wednesday. but fun. Actually, I'm going to try this first one. It smells so good in here. And then you're just going to cook these like about 3 minutes on each side. It's not going to puff up. What you want are really like a flat pancake with a lot of flaky layers. So it's starting to puff up a little because of the oil. But it'll flatten back down once you take it out of the frying pan. Ooh. Look at that. The nice thing about making these at home too is you can kind of make them as big as you want. kind of want to eat this right away, but I know it's going to be hot. But what they do recommend is for you to kind of smush this right before you eat it, so that all of the layers can get kind of smushy too. And you could totally tell, like, these layers are so oh yeah, so good. And you can kind of pick these apart because of all the little layers. And it's salty, kind of carby because of the flour and the pancake thing. And then that little bit of Chinese spice. I want to eat this, but it's so hot. But the layers look amazing. Whew. So tasty, crunchy, flaky, not buttery, but kind of buttery without the butter. And that's a Chinese scallion pancake. Everybody's gonna make it a little bit differently. I like mine a little bit on the thicker side, so it's a little bit heavier. If you want like the super traditional, super crispy, the only difference between this and that is you've made the dough a lot thinner. You have a lot more layers. But yeah, I'm gonna keep eating this. I'm gonna clean all this up and set it up for some pretty Instagram photos. And that's this week's Test Kitchen Wednesday. I hope you had a blast watching me make a total mess of things and then end up with this really amazingly yummy treat. And I will see you next week.